state of the NFC North. So Minnesota coming off a 13-4 season, the defending NFC North champions. They will likely bring back Kirk Cousins. Who knows what they do in the offseason? But I think where things get interesting with Minnesota are they have a lot of work to do on defense. I don't think anybody questions the offense, but that defense is awful. And they don't have the draft capital, and they don't have the salary cap to fix that defense tomorrow. They just don't. So they're still going to be a good team because of the talent they have, and I like Kevin O'Connell. I think he's a good coach. Do I think he's outstanding? That is always to be determined with any young coach. But I think a very impressive first season in Minnesota. I don't think anybody would have picked them not only to win the North the way they did, but to win 13 games. Impressive.
Right.
Nonetheless, moving on, Chicago, complete rebuild. Not sure what the hell they're doing in Chicago. You know how I feel about that situation.
Not 0-17, but 3-14. So you're
finished with the worst record in the NFL.
Yeah.
Same thing.
Yeah.
Moving on, the Green Bay Packers. What will happen with Aaron Rodgers if he retires? They're in cap hell. If he comes back, they have nothing to support him with. It is a disaster in Green Bay. And I think we all saw, even in Tampa, look at Tampa Bay. And I want you to look at Tampa Bay and mirror them with the Green Bay Packers. You know what they are? You know what they are, Jeff? You know why they lost to the Cowboys? Because they're an 8-9 football team.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what an 8-9 football team looks like. I don't care that they were at home. They were 8-9 for a fucking reason. Because they weren't good enough. Just like the Packers this year were not good enough. I don't care about the excuses. I don't care about anything. They just weren't good enough. So going into next season, man, you can call it Kool-Aid. You can call it, flip-flop. You can call it whatever the fuck you want. All I know is that the Detroit Lions are poised to make a legitimate run for the NFC North, and I would go out on a limb. I don't think it's a limb, to be honest. I think it's general consensus at the moment, and say that the Lions should win, and they are the favorites, in my opinion, to win the NFC North in 2023. I have no doubts about it, Jeff.
Yeah, and I think the big stat to look at is their division record. 5-1, and even during the stretch where the defense couldn't stop a nosebleed, you almost beat Minnesota on the road. Like, if it wasn't for that play by KJ Osborne, you'd have a victory. So you would have been 6-0 in the division on a year where you're 9-8. I mean, that's the most impressive stat to me. And if you look at the NFC North, too, they had the highest point differential, which matters. I mean, even for a team like the Vikings, they were 13-4. They were -3, which was the most oddest thing ever. Packers, 8-9. They were -1. And then the Bears, we're going to talk about the Bears, they were -137. But the point is, the Lions, although their record was 9-8, they were much better. They just started so bad at 1-6. The defense looked atrocious, dealt with a lot of injuries, so on and so forth. But all of these stats combined with the fact that you have assets in the draft, you have plenty of assets, you have money in free agency, you're retaining a lot of these players, you ended the season on a great note. Although the playoffs would have been the most ideal situation, you still ended it in the best way you could if you didn't make the playoffs, which is beating the Packers and knocking them out. This team now has confidence. They have moxie. They played in the biggest game of a lot of those guys' careers in Green Bay, and they took advantage of it. So moving forward, there's no doubt in my mind, now that you kept Ben Johnson especially, that retaining Ben, keeping that consistency, right? Retaining everybody that helped you get to 9-8. They're going to build on that. Players are going to get better. It's going to be Jared Goff one more year in Ben's system. Everybody's going to get more comfortable. And now there's an expectation, which good teams have, right? You go 3 wins the first year, you're 1-6. The fact that you get to 9 wins, you go from 3 to 9-8. The expectation next year, although it's higher, you want them to be in those types of situations. You want the expectation next year to be minimum playoffs. And looking how the NFC North is trending with the Vikings and the cap situation, the Packers with Aaron Rodgers, that's a whole nother situation. Whether he stays or goes, they're in cap hell. And the Bears are probably 2 years away from even making serious noise in the NFC North. So the Lions, to me, have the brightest future, and they're poised next season to take that next step. And to do that, 5-1 with young players, I think that's the most important thing, because those guys now only know in their head that they're beating these NFC North teams. It's not like back then where you're like, oh, the big bad Packers. They beat them twice.
On the road.
On the road, one of those. Like, there's no fear with these guys, and you have Jared Goff, who I think can still win big games. We'll see how the future holds up. But, yeah, I agree with you 100%. The Lions next year, although they might not be favorites, the Vikings, coming off the year they had, probably will be. I wouldn't be shocked.
I would be willing
Lions
to challenge you on that. I would say August of this upcoming year. Let's revisit that. I'm willing to put a steak dinner for everybody in the room that the Lions will have not only the highest odds to win the North, they will be NFC North favorites, 100%.
Yeah.
I think on most sports books and most reputable sites. I'm not going to go pull out one from a Washington Commander fan page account or something. We're going to look at reputable accounts and see where they're at in August, okay? Steak dinner on me for all of you if they're not the favorites, but I'm pretty damn sure they will be. Having said that, let me ask you this, Jeff. You look at the Bears, okay? They need an offensive line. They need wide receivers. Mm-hmm. And they just traded basically a first-round pick for Chase Claypool. So that's not working out.
Yeah.
They need edge rushers, linebackers, and their secondary is meh. But, they can improve.
Right.
They're in a full rebuild. Like you said, I think they're 2 years away. I would agree. Minnesota can compete for the North next year. But I play law of averages, man. I don't think you can go 11-0 in one possession games again. Even if you only played 8 next year, let's say 8 games were one possession, you would be lucky to be 5-3. I would be shocked if Minnesota was 5-3 in one possession games next year. It just doesn't work like that.
Right.
What has kept the Bills from getting the number 1 seed all these years? The one year they did, or I believe they were 13-3. I believe Josh Allen's second place MVP year when Aaron Rodgers won it.
Yep.
You know what they were in one possession games? 8-0. And then they were 3-3, and then 4-4. And that's just how the NFL works, because it's one misstep, one fumble, one interception, one bad decision, one drop pass that changes the whole game. That's the NFL.
Right.
So I don't expect Minnesota to duplicate this. It's just impossible.
It's hard. Especially the Vikings, they have a lot of guys they're going to have to pay. Like, they're already negotiating with Justin Jefferson. You got TJ coming up. Like, you got to know, what are you doing with Kirk and the money he's making? There's a lot of things the Vikings got to figure out.
I got to give the Vikings credit. That Hawkinson trade, to me, given the production he gave you.
Oh, yeah, he was productive.
I thought that was worth a second-round pick.
Yeah.
Now, are they going to be able to pay him? Who knows? They should. They should if they want to keep that offense together. It was explosive, but your defense is god-awful.
Yeah.
And why'd the Giants win? Because they were able to get off the field at certain times. Why did the Jaguars win? Oh, they were able to recover from 27-0.
Hold the Chargers
to
3.
3 second-half points.
Yeah.
Interesting. Right, so you got to find ways to win with defense in the NFL. The Lions beat the Packers 15-9. Why? Timely turnovers. In the red zone, Kirby Joseph 2 picks, Aiden Hutchinson interception. And that helps. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you very much, actually. So that's the game we're playing here. And the Packers, I have to disregard them because I don't know Aaron Rodgers' future. I just don't. Yeah. So until I know his future, which either way is bad for the Packers, I'm going to assume they're not division contenders next year.
I would agree.
So there you have it, Detroit. I think you're at the top of the table right now. I think you're on top of the not only the NFC North, I think you're one of the 4, maybe you could argue 5 best NFC teams. Now, if you think the Cowboys are better than the Lions, I think that's a fair opinion to have, especially after what you watched over the weekend. But I have a lot of issues with what they're paying Dak Prescott. I have a lot of issues with what they're paying Zeke. But you know what? They are the team they are right now. We'll see what happens in the offseason. But I think going into next year, you could argue top 4 team in the NFC.
And I want to see how they respond to that. Like, this is the first time they would come into the season. And like you said, maybe they're even division favorites. How do they handle that? And that's coaching. That's especially with young players. That's the biggest thing I'm going to be paying attention to, because they did it 8-2 down the stretch with little to no expectations. Now you have real expectations to win your division and get to the playoffs.
Without saying brand new Lions, right? Because that's the theme.
Right.
Have you ever been more confident in a staff, in a leadership group to overcome that and actually deliver? I would go out on a limb here, and again, I was born in 94, so you can't hold anything before that against me. Fuck off. But even under Caldwell and Schwartz, there was doubt that they could overcome and win those big games, and win those key divisional games, and win a game late in December, early January, and not lose to the Bengals when you can fucking win the division, and not lose to Green Bay when you can win the division at 11-4. So, to me, I've never been more confident. Now, is that a good thing about it? I don't know. I'm hopeful. I am. I really am. I'm genuinely optimistic about this. But the key thing for me, Jeff, more than anything, not just the North. You talk about expectations and can they live up to it? Can they deliver? I think they've proven in the 10-game stretch that, hey, you know what? We take ourselves seriously. We're about this. We think we're better than what our record would indicate. And you know what? When they were 1-6, Jeff, as hard as we were on them, especially me, what was one thing you and I agreed on 100% and we pushed out? They're not as bad as their record says they are.
No.
They don't look like a 1-6 team. 1-6 teams don't have a top 5 offense. Now, they have the worst defense in the NFL. That's a fact. But they usually don't have that type of offensive production. And the late game blunders, the fourth quarter blunders, the one possession losses, it's just frustrating. But then they got over it. And then they learned how to win on the road. And then they won 3 road games in a row before they lost to Carolina.
Right.
And then it was, all right, well, let's go beat the Packers, and we beat them twice. Let's go beat the Bears and beat them twice. Nice, huh? So I think they've earned it. You can ask the question. I think it's fair. They'll obviously be the ones to answer it next season, but I think there's a lot of confidence going into next season, man. I really do.
Yeah, I would agree. And if there's a coach that has proven to be able to trust in these situations, to keep these guys on track, it would be Dan Campbell and the assistant coaches and how they've improved. I mean, Ben's been great pretty much all year for the most part, but AG and his development, improving the defense in the second half, a lot to look forward to. So I'm with you. Lions this year, they're coming for that NFC North. They'll be at least contending. I do believe that.